Welcome, everyone. Marci Mearns here with another presentation on behalf of Radar Opus Software. And today, can someone just confirm that you can see my screen here showing our presentation on Filip Degroote's Dream Bundle? Are we good? Excellent, thank you. All right, so we've got an hour on the clock today and a lot to cover here with the Dream Bundle. So I'm going to jump right in. And if you've been here before, you know how I like to do this, which is interrupt me or ask a question when I take a breath. All right, one of the two. So what we're going to be looking at today is what's called the Dreams Bundle. And that actually consists of just two related products, the Repertory of Dreams and then a companion book, which is basically comprises the introductory material to the Repertory of Dreams. All right, and then I also am going to be covering in some detail this book here, Notes on Miasms, Heredity and Nosodes, second edition. We've got a couple of cases from that book. And while it's not part of the Dreams Bundle, I really would like to suggest that you take a look at that as well. And finally, if we have a chance, we'll look at this database. But let's just take a quick look at where these products can be located on the Radar Opus website. Here's the Dream Bundle. And this is now on sale for basically $120. And I'll tell you, this list price of $144 is actually incorrect. I think it's usually around $250. So I use this repertory every day, all day. Highly, highly recommended. And I want to show you this other book now while we're here doing this, just we'll get this part out of the way. You will see when I get to talking about this book that's available for $39 if you don't already have it. I recommend this one very highly as well. It's been, I've been under the influence of this book since about 2014 when it first came out. All right. So with that, let's just jump in. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating things for those who may already have been to one of these, but Filip Degroote, classical homeopath, medical doctor of medicine from Belgium, has been in full-time classical homeopathic practice since 1980. You can see his website here. And again, I'll remind you that I always put these notes into a PDF format, send them over to our customer support, orders at radaropus.us, so you can get a copy of that PDF, or you can always contact me and I'll send that to you. So you have all of this information for your reference. So just to review some of the features of Dr. Degroote's methodology. The energetic examination, that's what we covered last week, the kinesiology, the muscles, vertebrae, and so on. That is a recording that should be available. If it's not already, it should be available shortly via the Radar Opus website. And so that's last week's presentation was about an hour. The use of classical or bowel nosodes alongside the individual remedy. That information is covered from Dr. Degroote's point of view in this Miasms, Heredity, and Nosodes book. Okay, so this is another important feature of the way that he works. And finally, of course, the use of dreams as an important window into our understanding of materia medica and our patients. Okay, so let's jump in then. I want to give you guys a little more background on Dr. Degroote. I found this article on Homeopathy the other day. There's a link. And this is an excellent article with just lots of juicy information. So I would encourage you to take a look and you will get a more thorough perspective on his point of view and how he approaches what I would call perhaps the combination of the classical with some of the more modern approaches, what he refers to as the energetic homeopath or energetic homeopathy. Okay. So let's jump into the dreams. And I've just got a few quotes here that I want to share with you before we go into looking at the book and a case. Practice proves that almost any dream is worthwhile and useful to the homeopath. This is contrary to what is often lectured. Again, Dr. Degroote. The main reason why dreams are very useful is that dreams are carriers of powerful primary energetic information of the patient because censorship of the conscience falls away. Further, dreams, which are not specifically related to the daily reality and consequently have their origin in the creative unconscious of the patient, are normally very useful, even when dreamed only once. I found that part to be very interesting. We usually are looking for those repetitive dreams, right? And finally, I want to see, I thought this helps us place the use of dreams within the context of other important symptoms. Mental and general symptoms are the most indicative symptoms to be taken into account to find the most appropriate remedy for the patient. This includes mind symptoms originating from the unconscious as dreams and delusions. Okay? Avoid as much as possible objective clinical symptoms, which represent the false, quote, clinical homeopathy, keeping in mind that Hahnemann was the first to evaluate subjective symptoms as the most important ones. Subjective being mental and general symptoms, right? Good. So, lest you think that we're falling away from Hahnemann, we are actually staying right within Hahnemann's guidelines. So let's take a look at the Dreams bundle, now on sale. We talked about all of that. Here's the repertory of dreams. Just going to pop into my program. Come on. There we go. And in my, let's just close that case for now. In my library of repertories here, I have, and you'll notice this is a favorite of mine, Degroote's Dream Repertory. And the first thing you'll notice, if I open the table of contents, remember how I can do this over here by flipping that arrow down? You'll notice that this has actually got more than just a chapter of dreams. We do have dreams. Let's take a look at the table of contents this way. We have the dreams chapter, but we also have basically within similar structure to what we find in the synthesis or other modern repertories, we do have other chapters. And what is in those other chapters? Well, additional chapters offer important clinically verified symptoms from Dr. Degroote's practice. Here's an example. I actually went into something here, extremities, pain, and the leg. Let's go look at that really quickly. So if I'm in the repertory, if you remember how to get there, I'll just go extremities. I'm typing, no mouse necessary, extremities, leg, whoops. What did I do? Extremities. I went into the wrong. There's the extremities, leg. Sorry, pain, leg. There we go. So you see that these are small rubrics, but what we have here are remedies that have been confirmed through the doctor's clinical practice. I find these to be helpful additions, and often these will end up being confirmatory for a prescription that I might not even find in the standard repertories. So for that use alone, not to mention the dreams, it's a useful book. Okay, so the repertory of dreams, you know, it's what you would imagine, right? It's a repertory of dreams. Again, let's take a look one more time. This is in the realm of repertories. The dreams chapter itself, let's say perhaps pursued. Dreams of being pursued. So you'll have a principal rubric. This happens to be a rather large one. And then we will have lots and lots of sub-rubrics. Okay? So you would use these rubrics just like you use any other mental symptom. And I do find quite often that I find myself grouping rubrics together because, again, these are rather small. And as long as it's dreams pursued, I want to make sure that I get all of the rubrics as well as their sub-rubrics. Now, how did I get this display? Up here in the upper right-hand corner of my repertory window, remember, you can turn on the remedies display just by clicking that little pill bottle, and that'll turn them off and on so you can see better all of the sub-rubrics. Okay, so let us see what else have I prepared for you here. Additional chapters offer important clinically verified symptoms. Yeah, showed you that. Now, the second half, the second portion of this dreams bundle is a book. So it's going to live in a different part of your software, and it's called Dreams, a Homeopathic Perspective. Let's have a look. So instead of looking here in the repertories table of contents, I'm going to go to references, which is where all my books are located. And again, I happen to have this particular title up here at the top because, because I was going to make the presentation today, right? And if you recall, anytime we want to see the chapter order in any of these documents, be they a repertory or a reference work, we can just use these binoculars to open up that little table of contents. And I want to show you something here really quickly. We have index of homeopathic remedies, okay? And I'm going to look at Atrax. Now, if you don't know Atrax robustus, it's a web spider. I believe it's a funnel web spider from down under. And all this is giving me is a list of the homeopathic remedies, right? So kind of useless, isn't it? Let's go back to our table of contents, and we're going to get back to the Atrax in 2 seconds, because we do in fact have a lot of information about those dreams. Now, if you are interested in the philosophy behind the use of these dreams, you're going to want to read all of the front matter and the introduction in this. And again, this is really, really what I find to be very, very useful, and, you know, helps us know how to incorporate the dreams into our work. So I have a little sidebar for you. Okay, you saw that I got tripped up there just looking for Atrax, didn't I? So we're going to take a sidebar journey here. And forgive me if you're already familiar with the types of searches that we can do in the Radar Opus software. If you remember, I like to use the advanced search. The shortcut is function F5. I'm going to go to my software and I'm going to bring that up. Now, if you don't know how to find that, you can look here at the very top in the center. You'll see it says search, and there's actually a little arrow that allows me to select the advanced search. Now, what do I get with the advanced search? Well, I get 4 actual search fields here, don't I? This first one is words, so I can search for words here. I can search remedies from within a database, and then these last 2 families and cases I don't fiddle with a whole lot. Let's take a look. Let's go back to our presentation for just a moment. Okay, you saw how I can open up the advanced search. I always use my function F5 key on my keyboard to open up that window. Now, we also have a simple search available. Okay, that would be the function F4. And I want to show you, let's go back to software for a minute. If you've got, see up here in the upper right-hand corner, I've got 2 different magnifying glasses. The jeweled looking one, the one that's selected now, is the advanced. If for some reason you're here with that simple or single search, you can just click the jewel and you're back to search remedies and words or a combination. Okay. So again, we're just doing a little review here so you get some facility with this whole situation. Now, yeah, there's the bejeweled thing. So you can flip back and forth. Now, there is a difference between the results that you get from typing in the words listing or the remedies list. I'm going to use a search for the remedy Atrax robustus, and we're going to take a look at 2 different results. Okay. This becomes important with some of these books that we're looking at now, where, well, let's just start. Okay. So if you recall, there's a remedies database. And if there is information about a remedy, that remedy will, or even if there's not sometimes, that remedy is going to come up here in my search. So I've just typed in and then selected from the list of available remedies. I've selected my remedy Atrax robustus. And I'm actually going to choose this section right up here, just to the left, says where to search. I'm going to search in open documents only. Okay, just for the sake of making things quick. And I'll launch the search there. And you'll notice that I have a number of repertories that come up with symptoms for Atrax. Okay, that's what happens when I do a search in the remedies database section. And in the dream repertory, you see we have 287 dreams for Atrax. Okay, now let's go back to our search and let's do this another way. I'm not going to get rid of that word. I'm just going to uncheck the box, which means it's still there, but we're not going to use it right now. And instead, I'm going to type Atrax, just the word Atrax, okay? It doesn't need to be an abbreviation, doesn't need to come from remedies database. But when I tell the program to search for the word Atrax, again, in all open documents, you'll notice that now I don't get those repertory hits anymore, but I do get 9 hits in, remember, this is that book we were looking at, Dreams, a Homeopathic Perspective, and I've got a whole discussion here about this spider and several dream themes. Okay, I'm just quickly scrolling so you get an idea. Okay, I hope that difference is clear. There's one kind of a search where you're searching in a remedies database and another where you're searching for a word. Now, if I try and search for both, guess what? Zip, I don't get a thing. Why? Because they're two very different searches that we're doing. But I would encourage you, if you're not getting the information that you're looking for by searching for a specific remedy, try spelling out all or a portion of that remedy here in the words field and see if you don't get some great results. This is the way that you can get into those details around the various remedies in the part 2 cases. So this is the navigation window for Dreams, a Homeopathic Perspective, and all of the individual remedies, of course, are here. Let's look at anacardium, okay? A huge history on anacardium, and then a discussion of the dream themes, okay? You're only going to get this information if you remember you need to search words, okay? So that's a little sidebar that we had to take. Yeah, and I've shown you that here. Okay, so are you all with me? Do you want to do a case now? We good to go? Okay. Seeing no objections, we will continue then with a sample case that I have for you on the use of the dreams. Okay, so this is a case of a hip pain in a woman age 70. She says, last night I woke up and got a coughing jag from a dry tickle. You know, everybody had that famous cough thing. Oh, here we go. Like when I had COVID, I have a terrible pain in my right hip. It's in my hip going down my inner thigh and along my femur. It feels like deep in my bones, not like a muscle strain. When I take a nice hot shower, it feels better. So of course I ask, is this new? And she says, amazingly, when I was younger and still having my periods, I got this thigh pain in front of the thighs every time I got my period. Bingo. Isn't that nice? Well, still not quite sure what to do with the case. I took a look through my case notes with this client for dreams. And about a year ago, she said I had these wild dreams, and she had the same one twice. Okay, so 2 underlines as far as I'm concerned. I was getting married for the first time, and my mom was here. That was kind of nice. Okay, so this is the case. And let us have a look here really quickly. So the first clipboard that I created, and these are those, you know, rather boring or less than useful, shall we say, according to Dr. Degroote, clinical symptoms. We have the pain in the right hip, pain going down the inner thigh, inner side of the thighs, complaints of the bones, and bone pain, because that deep in bone pain is really a thing, isn't it? Let's take a look at the case. There's our first clipboard. Let me close this. Okay, so there's our first clipboard. I probably don't have this case quite organized with the priorities as well as I might, but you'll see in just a moment when we get to the bottom of things. When I was younger and still having my periods, I got this thigh pain in the front of the thighs every time I got my period. Okay, now take a look at another screen here. One of the things I found in that Homeopathy article by Dr. Degroote was an extensive list of ways in which symptoms can be considered peculiar. Remember strange, rare, and peculiar? And I just selected a couple of them to represent this symptom. Peculiar through the modality. In this case, her pain in the thighs was during the menses, and peculiar through the localization, the front of the thighs. So these modalities, these peculiarities of this symptom actually are going to elevate it in my analysis almost to the level of what you might call a strange, rare, and peculiar. Okay? So where is that clipboard? That's clipboard number 2. Let's have a peek at that. Okay, there's that one. And you may notice that I zeroed out some of these. The anterior part, what I did leave here as a group were the pain in the thighs during menses, and this one seemed to me so critical. Complaints preceding and attending the flow, extending down the hips, thighs, and legs. Okay, so I grouped all this stuff together, and I figured that's really kind of key to understanding the peculiar nature of this case. But we're not done. So let's get on with it here. Okay, we looked at that. When I take a nice hot shower, it feels a lot better. Okay, clipboard 3, warm bathing ameliorates. Okay. Here's the tickling cough. I gotta say, it does little or nothing for our analysis at the end of the day, but I do have it on the clipboard, and we'll include it at the end of when we take a look at everything. Here's where we want to go. Remember the wild dreams? I was getting married for the first time, and my mom was here. So we have dreams of the wedding party, and the mother. She says that was kind of nice. So let's take a look at that. Those are on, my last clipboard here. Now notice I've grouped together dreams of wedding party and dreams of a wedding. Let's go and take a look in the dreams repertory. Dreams of a wedding. Okay, nice little rubric, isn't it? There's dreams of wedding dresses, getting somebody wearing a black wedding dress. It goes on. And these are really interesting. Again, if you go back and look at how these themes of a particular remedy are reflected in their dreams. Long story short, I wanted to make sure I had everything having to do with a wedding, so I also put the wedding party. Dreams of the wedding, dreams of a wedding party. And remember, she said her mother was there. So I just put in dreams of mother. Okay? So this, out of these two, the wedding is the more unusual of the two. So let's actually limit. Remember how we can turn this into a filter and say an eliminative rubric. I only want to see remedies that have dreams of a wedding or wedding party. Remember how we do this? Turns them into a filter. Everything that doesn't belong to that group is no longer part of our analysis. So let's take that one. And let's go back and look at that clipboard with the, remember the unusual, remarkable symptoms for the pain in the thighs, preceding and attending the menses. This is that most remarkable SRP in the case. And if I'll do it just so you can see how we go through the process again. I'm taking that and turning it into another eliminative rubric. And the remedy is now becoming very clear. Okay, now I'm turning on the display of some of these other clipboards. Okay, warm bathing. Well, that warm bathing fell off altogether, didn't it? It doesn't really belong to any of these, but here's the tickling. Here's the initial. So, as you may imagine, the remedy that I gave in this case was magnesium muriaticum. And this woman has done really, really well on Mag-Mur. As, dare I say it, a constitutional, like whenever she gets sick, if it's not some acute little thing, she does a Mag-Mur 30 and it kind of pulls her right back out. Now, there's a big discussion about Mag Muir in the Dreams Homeopathic Perspective, in the Dreams book, which I think will be worth your reading through as well. So again, this is a reminder, mental and general symptoms are the most indicative to be taken into account. So again, with this case, I took the dreams of the wedding party and this SRP of these complaints. And I finally, it had been a long time working with this woman. And I was kind of, when she came in with this, I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? That's why I dug back for the dream. And that's why at the end of the day, she's now happy with her Mag Muir. Okay. So that's a sample case from how you too can utilize this really powerful repertory tool with your cases and hopefully, solve a case or two. For 120 bucks, you solve 1 or 2 cases, you've made your investment back, right? Not that I'm here to sell you anything, but I really, really highly recommend that book. Okay, so let's carry on. And we're going to move into, if you recall, in last week's presentation, I skipped over Dr. Degroote's 2 of his important insights having to do with his development as a practitioner. So we're going to double back and pick those up now. The first has to do with hereditary or ancestral energy. And basically what he says is that we need to prescribe the individual remedy of the patient only on the non-nosodal symptoms. We're going to get into that. We're going to see what that's all about in just a moment. The third insight was the timing of the nosode administration. By administering the appropriate nosode in connection with or shortly after the correct individual remedy, the case gains momentum. Okay, both of these are covered in, where's the picture of the book? This book. Yeah, I don't want to go to the case right away. I want to say it's in the notes on miasms, heredity and nosodes. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump straight into how to apply this information in a case. So this is a case I took actually out of the book, but I've worked it up for you so you can see the utility. And I actually have used this technique on multiple occasions to varying degrees of success, I'll say. Sometimes it solves the case when nothing else does. Okay, and that's great. So here we have the short anamnesis. I'm going to give you the list of symptoms, again, which I simply took out of the text. Sleepwalking every night. Diarrhea before exams. Very fastidious. Weeping at reprimands. Anxious in the dark. Feels as if there's somebody in the room. Intolerant of the sun. Dislikes hot drinks. Loves steak and skin wars. Boy, can we see a lot of remedies peeking through here, can't we? Easy to get confused with a case like this. So I'm just going to stop my share for 2 seconds while I bring up this second case. And while I'm doing that, if anybody has any questions, feel free to. This one is labeled case 1, right? No sodal rubrics. There we go. Okay. And Zoom, hello, there you are. Okay. Let's bring that back up. Okay. Case 1. First 3 clipboards, sleepwalking every night. Before an examination, suffers from diarrhea, very fastidious, and weeping at the least reprimand. So those are our first 3 clipboards. We have our somnambulism, that's sleepwalking. Now, if I didn't know that, I might have looked in the sleep chapter. But if I were to, for example, and these are from the Synthesis Adonis. If I don't know, and so I put in sleep, thinking, oh, that'll be in the sleep chapter. Walking in bed, child at sea, mind, walking in bed, child is walking in bed, sleep, blah, blah, blah. I might have to do a search actually. In any event, it's somnambulism. That's our first rubric for the child, coupled with diarrhea after anxiety. That's the smallest rubric, isn't it? 21 remedies? Let's have a look. Yeah. Diarrhea after anxiety. And finally, fastidious, along with weeping from reprimands or reproaches. So I actually grouped all of those together. And well, what are we looking at? Are we looking at phosphorus? Are we looking at Ignatia, pulsatilla? It's a little, you know, she could need carcinosin for all we know, except she's not sleepwalking, right? Okay, so let's carry forward with this case. The next set of symptoms, I have anxious in the dark. This feeling that there's somebody in the room. Okay, now on this screenshot, for some reason, I've got a symptom that actually doesn't belong that I threw out. And then the exposure to the sun aggravates, does not tolerate the sun. Let's look at the actual clipboards. Fear the dark, delusions, there's another person in the room. And what was that third one? There we go. Exposure to the sun aggravates. Well, that's moderately helpful, isn't it? If I put everything together, still just kind of a mishmash. We really don't know where we are with this patient. So let's get back to it. I've got dislikes hot drinks, loves steak. I've got warts. Okay. So I'm just going to bring up the whole shooting match here. Okay. And it looks like I need to actually just zoom out a bit so that we can even see everything all together. So this is what we have if we just take a flat repertorization for this case. Okay. Now, what Dr. Degroote is suggesting here is that we set out and judge separately the nosodal symptoms. That is the rubrics which contain carcinosin, metarinum, syphilinum, and or tuberculinum. Actually, a serinum should be in there as well. In his thinking, in his understanding, those rubrics represent the hereditary energy. And what we are to do in the first cut, if you will, is to prescribe the individual remedy of the patient on the non-nosodal symptoms. All right, let's go back to the analysis, and I'm going to show you what's meant by this. Actually, I'll move to our next slide first. We're going to do a normal repertorization with grouping the symptoms as needed. Well, we did that. There it is. Okay. Now, the next step is we're going to limit to nosodes all or one clipboard at a time. Here's the technique. Let's take a look at clipboard number 1. And we want to ask ourselves, with each one of the symptoms that we've chosen for the patient, is this a nosodal rubric or a non-nosodal rubric? In other words, are there nosodes in this rubric? I'm having to move all of this stuff out of the way from Zoom. Now, the simplest way to do that, if you're not familiar, you will be now by the time we're done. You see this little tree here in the upper left-hand corner? That allows me to place a limit on the symptoms that I'm looking at, and I'm going to limit to nosodes. Now, my analysis is displaying for this symptom the nosodes. And it includes not only lysine, serinum, tuberculinum, and Gertner. That tells me, guess what? This symptom is useless because it's a nosodal rubric. In other words, it's likely a representation of the ancestral energy in the case. So what am I going to do? I'm going to zero it out. I just typed a 0 and the symptom is gone. I will remove the family limitation, and that symptom is no longer part of my analysis. Let's do another one. Diarrhea after anxiety. How do I determine if this is nosodal? Well, I can tell you right away it is, because here's carcinosin. Yeah. But we're going to do the exercise. We're going to set the limit for nosodes. Sure enough, there's carcinosin. What does that tell me? I got to zero it out and I can remove that limit. All right. And so on. So the first, with the first two clipboards, I've got zero. I've got zero of a score here because these both contain nosodes. And what we don't want to do is confuse the ancestral energy of the patient with what's actually the individual remedy in the moment. Okay. Let's bring up the next clipboard and let's again put our limit on there for nosodes and see which ones of these we need to get rid of. All right, fastidious, you see, it's everything's there. Bye, we're going to zero that out. And then lo and behold, all of this also becomes useless. So you're thinking, well, what on earth am I going to prescribe on, right? Just bear with me here. We're going to go to the next one. Here's Fear of the Dark. As you can imagine, of course, we know Metarhinum's in there. Yep, top dog. Okay, so that's zeroed out. Hope I'm not going too fast for anyone. Let's get to delusions. There's another person in the room. Ah, maybe that'll do it. Look, there are no nosodes here. Do you see that? There are no nosodes. Because when I limit to nosodes, nothing comes up. What that means is I can actually use this in my analysis. Remember, let's go back to the suggestion, which is, where's the methodology? Here we are. Limit to nosodes all in one clipboard at a time. Yeah. Judge separately the nosodal symptoms. Okay. Prescribe the individual remedy of the patient only on the non-nosodal symptoms. Okay. So we're getting somewhere. We finally have a symptom, don't we? That was clipboard 5. Let's go to clipboard 6. Exposure to the sun. Place your bets. Does that got nosodes in it? Oh, it sure does. All right. Zero it out. Can't use that one. Let's bring up another clipboard. Aversion to hot drinks. Oh, look. I do believe that there are no nosodes there. Let's remove the limit. Sure enough, with aversion to hot drinks, this symptom here, I have no nosodes. So we're good. We've got aversion to hot drinks, and we had that other one, whatever it was. Was this it? Yeah. So far I've got 2 symptoms for my patient. And we're down to clipboard. Okay, worm, aversion to hot drinks. We're almost done, people. Desires beefsteak. Oh, look, Metarhinum and tuberculinum. So, you know, I don't even use a limit. I'll just zero it out. And finally, the condylemata. Well, there's Metarhinum. I don't even need to do the limiting thing. I'm just going to zero it out. So when I've gone through my exercise now and I have removed by just zeroing them out, when I've removed all of those nosodal symptoms, I am left with what? I'm left with lycopodium, with 2 symptoms, aversion to hot drinks, and it's here for the delusion, another person in the room. That's pretty good, isn't it? Nothing else even comes close. Nothing else even comes close. So let's take a look at what the good doctor found. Okay, here we have my summation of the analysis steps. Limit to nosodes, all in one clipboard, zero them out, remove the nosodes limit, blah, blah. Review the main symptoms. So we're reviewing them just now, and lo and behold, well, you can review these pictures. Lycopodium 200K has been administered, and since then, the nervousness at school and the sleepwalking completely ceased. Now, would we have gotten lycopodium out of that mishmash that we had originally? Probably not. Okay. But that's an example of how using that first discovery can be helpful. And again, I've used this in the past when you see a lot going on and you don't quite know how to prioritize the symptoms. Okay. So this methodology is described again in Notes on Miasm, Heredity, and Nosodes. The use of nosodes is covered extensively. There are definitions of miasms. Let's just go ahead and have a look at some of what's in that book. Where's my, there we go. Notes on miasms, heredity. Yeah. heredity and classic nosodes. I think it's this section here on miasms. Introduction. Okay. This is really going to give you a nice overview of not just classical miasmatic theory, but, really brought into practical application. Okay, so he's going to give you the history, but he's also going to give you some very, very practical, as you can see from that case, practical use of the theory of miasms and when and how to use nosodes, as well as bowel nosodes. Bowel nosodes are also covered. Let's see if we can see where bowel nosodes are covered. Watch, I'll just erase and I'll just put bowel, the word bowel, searching in open documents, and don't make me a liar. Here we go. In notes on miasms, heredity, bowel nosodes and miasms. There we go. So he's going to give us a whole history of discussion of bowel nosodes. Really cannot say enough good about this book. Like I say, when I found this book and way back when, I kind of read it from cover to cover. Or maybe I had the original version. Not sure. Okay. Questions, comments? Hearing none, we shall continue. This is the third insight, timing of nosode administration. Now, if you were here last week and you are a practitioner who is utilizing any of the kinesiology techniques that were discussed last week, you really may want to look in more depth than what I'm going to cover here, because he talks about hand modes for testing when is the appropriate time to administer the nosode. He goes into a lot of detail here, which again, for me in my practice, does not apply. But it's interesting and relevant. And here's the part for us today. We are going to look at one more case. Most classical homeopaths search for and prescribe only the individual basic remedy of the patient, which originates from the mineral, vegetable, or animal kingdom, and thus is not a miasmatic remedy, which has a human origin, like, in other words, a nosode. By prescribing this homeopathically correct remedy, he or she touches only the personal energy of the patient, but not his hereditary energy. Witness our case here. We are touching the individual remedy of this patient, and we have removed anything that may have belonged to an inherited predisposition. Okay? So, the patient's complaints mostly improve, but the homeopath mostly misses the following awakened ancestral energetic disorder. And he talks about this disorder. In other words, the need for the miasmatic remedy is also mostly the reason why the patient goes through an aggravation. Okay, you can read all of that if you so choose. I think the operative and important point here is the disturbed buried ancestral energy, which comes temporarily to the surface, that is, with the administration of the original personal remedy, has finally returned again to a dormant state. It comes with the aggravation and then it goes dormant again. We may miss an opportunity offered to us to treat the deeper hereditary energetic disturbances. So even in this case, a nosode will come up and will be needed once we've prescribed the lycopodium, if I am indeed understanding and interpreting correctly what Dr. Degroote is saying to us here. So here's another case, and if you'll bear with me for just a moment, I'm going to bring that case up onto my clipboards. This is going to be a quick one. Okay. And let's get back to the screen share. So let's look at our third case for today. And this is another case directly out of the book, and it's illustrating the need for the nosode. All right. This is an acute case followed by a nosode. Father consulted me for his daughter of 5 years old. Well, whatever. who had a period of fever 2 weeks before and now has a cough. The cough sounds loose at bedtime, at daytime, but dry at night. Every time she blew the nose, she had an earache. When she was feverish, she had cold feet. Concerning her character, the father told me she's a go-getter. She always knows what she wants and is really obstinate in getting it. She's afraid in the dark and consequently needs a little light in the sleeping room. She eats in a special manner. Mostly she eats only one single part of the meal. For example, only the vegetables and not the meat and potatoes. The other time, only the meat and so on. Doesn't this just sound like every kid case we ever had? Okay. These are the 6 symptoms that were taken, and we will look at them. I have them on 2 clipboards here. We have on the first clipboard here, we have the physicals. We have the coldness of the feet during fever. By the way, that I find that to be a useful rubric just in general. When there's a fever, I always check on the hands and feet. Cough dry at night, loose by day. That's a beauty, isn't it? And ear pain, blowing the nose aggravates. On our mentals, we have obstinate, we have fear of the dark, and we have this fastidious about food, right? This is a tiny rubric. So how useful is that one? I guess it kind of depends on if the remedy we want to prescribe is in that rubric, right? According to Jeremy Scher. So there's a screenshot of the analysis, and let's just see what Dr. Degroote says. The remedy to prescribe as a result of the repertorization, he gave calcarea and was indeed also confirmed by the energetic examination. Yeah. She got a dose of MK, followed up. 4 days later, they returned because there was no change for the better. The child didn't like to play alone and had a very changeable humor. Often she cried, and shortly afterwards, she laughed again when consoled. Once, when she was not getting what she wanted from the father, she hit his face and broke his spectacles. Because calcarea was well indicated but didn't act, it was indicated to look for a nosode. Okay? Makes sense, right? You can see where he gave the calcarea here. In fact, I have a different analysis of this in just a minute we can look at. So it was indicated to look for nosode. The changeable mood, inclination to strike as an expression of destructiveness made me think about tuberculinum. Energetic examination pointed to me to select tuberculinum. This made it possible that the hereditary obstruction was taken away so that in a few days the girl regained perfect health. Let's take a look at another way to get to the calcarea. And perhaps even, I think we can all understand why he selected tuberculinum, right? But let's go ahead and take a look at the case from another angle. So what I did here is I took all of these symptoms and I copied them over onto this other clipboard. First of all, I'm going to just select all, and I'm going to give them all an underlining. Oh, I'm going to give them one underline. And I'm actually going to apply our little technique, looking for the non-nosodal rubrics, right? Remember how I do this? So if I've got my symptoms, I'm just going to put on the nosode limit, and anybody that appears to have nosodes is going to get zeroed out. So I get rid of obstinate. I get rid of fear of the dark. Again, I'm just zeroing this out. I get rid of cold feet during the fever. And, oh, I have to get rid of fastidious about food, don't I? Because syphilinum appears there. Now, if I remove my limit, calcarea is right up here at the top, right? Because I really only have 2 non-nosodal symptoms. And of course, I have all the way out here to stannum, possible remedies to consider just utilizing. Let's make those an eliminative so it's a little bit easier to see. Those are our non-nosodal symptoms. I have 12 of them. I did also experiment around, and if you're doing this, you might want to try changing your analysis strategy to sum of symptoms and degrees. So I'm going to now add everything together, and calcarea by summing up both the number of symptoms, which is 2, and the degrees. Well, calcarea and sulfur are kind of equally matched, aren't they? But you can see very clearly probably what's underneath the selection of calcarea in this instance, okay? And what happens if I'm going to select all, and I'm going to give everybody a grade 1. If I turn this back on, let's bring back the nosodes, shall we? I'll loosen those. Those are now normal. Let's bring back the nosodes. Yeah, and there's tuberculinum right up at the top of the, if I just limit my analysis to nosodes, tuberculinum is clearly in the lead. Okay. Wow, how did we go so quickly through all of this? Okay, that's that case. The third case, again, showing the importance of using a nosode when it's needed, right? He gave a great individualized remedy, did nothing, had to go for the nosode, and that took care of the problem. One final product that I want to show you here is this little gem called Remedy Interactions and Kingdoms. Okay, this is another thing that's not included in the bundle, but it is here and it's available. Let me show you how you use this, because I think this covers a topic that many of us perhaps don't use in the way as much as we might. Okay, so actually, I'm going to use this case. And I'm going to say, let's pretend we're not Dr. Degroote anymore and we didn't give the nosode. So we're back to the old-fashioned way of doing it. Let's say we gave calcarea and we'd like to give a remedy that follows well after calcarea. All right. Now, the way to do that, the way I teach people to do that, is by using, first of all, the remedies database. There are other ways, but this way you'll never forget. If you bring up the remedies database and you bring up your remedy, CALC, calcarea with the period, there's calcarea carbonica. Here's the remedy information window. So I gave this remedy. I now want to give a remedy that follows well after. Down here, just below where the title of the name of the remedy appears, is this tab for what's called families. And we have something called related remedies. So if I open it up, I can choose calcarea followed well by, and I get a database of remedies. I can actually highlight that family in my analysis, and there they are highlighted for me. Do you see that? So again, from the remedy information window, I'm going to select families, and I can say followed well by. I also have complementary, which is very similar, right? So I usually will look at both. I can highlight that family. What Dr. Degroote has given us is yet another database, which complements those that I just showed you. And it's this one called Allied and or Complementary and Follow Well. And this database, in many instances, what I discovered when I researched smaller remedies, he's giving us remedies that follow well that are not listed in the other databases. I hope I'm being clear about that. This database, which is right here, remedy interactions and kingdoms, allied or complementary and or follow well. There are a lot of small remedies in here that are not included in those other follows well after databases. So if that's a tool that would be of service to you, you're doing a lot of prescribing and you need remedies that follow well after, you may want to consider adding this particular tool to your toolbox. Again, one of the things probably that's most useful with Dr. Degroote's works is that he is giving us information. Remember what I said about small remedies that have clinical confirmation. You know, this is a very prolific homeopath with lots and lots of verified clinical additions. Many of his additions are included in Synthesis Adonis, but certainly not all. So if that's something that you would find useful, again, you know, just all of these single symptoms, you really may want to look at going ahead and adding these to your collection. Okay. Oh yeah. Oh, Nux Machata was a great example, actually, of something I found where Nux Machata, his listing of remedies that follow well after Nux Machata was quite an expansion of the available remedies in the other database. So that's what I have for you today. I'm Marci. You can find me at marcimearns.com if you're interested in one-on-ones, that sort of thing. Of course, you can find the recordings and products for sale as well as customer service and so at radaropus.us. Don't know when I'm going to be back again, but thank you for joining. Again, if you would like to get a copy of the PDF notes that I have for you from today, you can get those from Nakash at, see if we, oh, I don't have the link active there. It's just radaropus.us. You can send an email there. And again, you can go to my website, marcimearns.com, or my homeopathy website, and I'll pop those over to you. So I'm going to stop my share. Thank you. Oh, look at all the little clapping hands. Thank you, guys. It was really, really great to have you. And do stay in touch. Okay?
Thank you,
Any
Marci.
final questions? Yeah, it's my pleasure. Any questions? I can't believe we buzzed through that in an hour. You guys are great. Okay.
No problem.
Wishing you
Wonderful.
all
Thank you.
well. Yep. See you again. Take care. Bye-bye.